when I was around about 7 or 8 years old, I had an experience of going to bed and going to sleep and drifting out of a window.
Right.
And from drifting out of the window, I was then in a stadium with two beings either side of me, and looking down on a football-sized pitch of white light, and in the centre of that football pitch was a ship with people coming on and off that ship.
Right. How you managed to get out of the house?
It was floating out of the window.
Right. So was the window open, do you recall, or do you?
No, it was closed.
So do you feel you went through the window?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. And then, would you say that was you were in a dream state, or were you in a conscious state? What?
Reflecting on it, it was half dreaming and half realising that I felt floating.
Right. So this experience was so vivid, you've remembered it for your whole life.
It was a dream that has stayed with me and is as visual now as when I experienced it.
Okay. Might you be able to describe these beings?
No.
Okay.
I cannot. Yeah, all I can say is that they were either side of me, and they wanted me to look down.
Did you have any sense of where you were? Had you been taken away from your house?
Yes, yeah, I'd been taken away from my house. This place was, I'd never experienced anything.
Right. Tell me about your first conscious recollection in the morning. What happened then?
My mum came into the room, and I was on a windowsill, which is probably 4 or 5 feet, 4.5 feet tall, and I was on the window ledge, hanging on to the window.
Right.
And my mum said, "What are you doing up there?" And
right.
I explained what I'd just I'd experienced.
So when you're clinging onto the window, are you saying that your feet were not on the actual?
They were on the windowsill.
All right.
My feet were on the windowsill.
Right. So you were quite high up.
Yeah.
For a small child.
Yeah.
Right. And had you climbed onto that windowsill before, in previous to that?
No.
Right. So you're on the windowsill, which is 4.5 feet up, and your feet are on there as well, and your hands. So you're completely on the window. So was it a normal sort of 7-8 inch windowsill sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
And you so what were you like crouched down on it?
The small top window was open, and I had my hand just outside holding on to the outside of the window on the frame.
And did you feel that you'd been outside when you realised you were in this position on the windowsill? Or do you?
No.
Right, okay, so you weren't sure what had happened?
No.
And have you got any recollection of how you may have got on that windowsill then?
No, none at all.
Okay.
It was only the disturbance of my mum walking into my bed, opening the door, walking into the bedroom, that I'd realised I was there.
Right. Something else that you told me about, not long after that, you noticed something. Just tell us about that.
2 or 3 days later, I was playing in my bedroom, when I just, something in me, I directly put my hand to my throat and felt this object in my throat.
Right.
Nothing, there was no mark there or anything, or it wasn't sore or anything, but it was just something in me that just went straight to it.
Right.
And I felt this sharp object within, under the skin.
Now, any marks on the skin at the time at all?
No.
Nothing at
None
all?
At all.
Okay. And how long after this incident on the windowsill did you notice it? Would you say?
I'd say 2 or 3 days later.
2 or 3 days. Okay, so you've obviously lived with it all your life, this tiny lump in your neck, which I've actually felt earlier on today. And so you must have an idea for the size and the shape and the consistency of it, whether it's hard or soft or pliable or whatever.
I'd say it's triangular in shape. I can feel at least 3 points. And I'd say it's probably 2 millimeters from top to bottom, I'd say.
Right, so you think it's like a piece of Dairy Lee cheese sort of thing, sort of shape?
Yeah.
Right, and it's got a thickness of a few millimeters, you think?
Couple of mil, yeah.
And do you have the feeling that it's What's its hardness like?
I've squeezed it as hard as I can, and then I can. The nerves obviously round it that's hurt.
Right.
When I squeeze it as hard as I can, because I'm seeing if that will crumble or.
Right.
But it's stayed the same.
Right, and so you think it's quite hard substance?
It's a very hard substance.
Right. Stone, metal, plastic, rubber, bone. Would you be able to guess hazard?
I'd say metal or stone.
And now, do you have any sense of whether it's fixed or floating about of its own accord?
It's fixed.
You think it's fixed?
It's fixed.
So do you have a feeling that it's maybe attached?
Yeah, I would imagine it's attached to...
Okay. Now, next question is, have you ever had a medical examination or any... You've not?
No, I've not.
Okay, and no x-rays or anything like that?
No.
It would be quite interesting to do that. Do you describe this experience as a UFO experience then?
Yeah.
Have you done any research into it? Have you read anyone else's account who claim to have been taken through things?
I read Whitley Strieber's book of Communion and how he could float, out the window, and regarding that as well, when I read Communion, I was living at Rendlesham, and my daughter, who was only about 3 years old then, tottered over to me as I was, and that book has got an embossed face of an alien on the front. Yeah. And she came up and pointed at the picture and said, "Daddy, he comes in my room at night," and that knocked me back, because it
really.
Yeah.
So you would like it removed then?
I would, yeah.
Right. And do you think it's performing any function? Do you have a feel for that?
In the last 4 or 5 years, come to the realisation: why have I got that?
Right.
Am I being tracked? Or
Roger Lear, he reckons that they're information gathering devices. So in other words, maybe your mood, your heart rate, your physical state, your mental state, if that's connected to your central nervous system, could be sending that information elsewhere.
We are currently seeking to help Mark have this object surgically removed and analysed. If anyone knows a good surgeon, please let us know. It might be something mundane, but if we don't examine it, we'll never know for sure. In the rest of today's show, I will be looking at lone gunman incidents which have occurred in the UK and pointing out that I don't think these events happened as they are portrayed in our docile mainstream media. Enjoy the rest of the show.
All right, now some of these incidents that we've had in the UK with Derek Bird, Thomas Hamilton, Michael Ryan, where people have gone into a town and shot people for no apparent reason, these also fracture society, or at least the communities where they occurred. Now, I've put a question mark on there because I actually don't think any of these guys were lone gunmen. And I would recommend this book for starters. This is it's Neil Sanders' book. You may have seen Neil Sanders on my TV show. It's called Your Thoughts Are Not Your Own. And this book spells out MK Ultra techniques, techniques of hypnosis, psychotronics, all of the different techniques that intelligence agencies have used to control people's minds and make them do things completely against their will. All right? And I suspect there's some of that being going on with these cases. Michael Ryan, people who witnessed Michael Ryan on his killing spree in 1987 said that he had a complete blank expression on his face. And his mother tried to stop him when he was halfway through his killing spree of killing 16 people, and he just shot his mother in cold blood. And then later on, after he'd barricaded himself into a school, he was expressing concern about his mother. It was as if he'd come out of a trance. Thomas Hamilton, this is the Dunblane Massacre. I recommend this book by Sandra Utley. This book will get you close to the truth about what happened in Dunblane. Hamilton allegedly killed 16 children and then a school teacher and then himself. Now, if you read this book and the evidence that it uncovers, you'll realise that Hamilton didn't kill himself, right? And once you understand that, you realise that his killer has never been named or uncovered, right? Now, you would have thought if someone had killed someone in the act of trying to kill children, they would have been made a hero, but we've never heard who that person is. So it's my opinion that Hamilton was in some way steered to do what he did, because Hamilton ran boys' clubs and he had a lot of videos and photographs of semi-naked boys that he was sharing with a lot of police officers in Central Scotland Police. And he was regularly writing letters to two MPs and some of the chiefs of police in central Scotland. So he had a lot of dirt on a lot of people. So it's possible that there are people who wanted to get rid of him. I think he was manipulated somehow. Maybe mind control, I don't know. But there's huge question marks over what happened at that school. And of course, we haven't got all of the records of what happened, because they actually, some of the evidence that was in the inquiry, there was a secrecy order put on it for 100 years. So there's a whole shelf of evidence that no one's seen that's been locked away for 100 years. And that includes some of the autopsy reports. And part of, I believe, part of Hamilton's autopsy reports, which shows that he had 2 fatal gunshot wounds. So he couldn't possibly have killed himself. So there's massive question mark over the Thomas Hamilton incident. Now, one of these cases that I've done quite a lot of digging on is the next one. This is Derek Bird, 2010, taxi driver who allegedly one morning wakes up, glorious sunny day, 2nd of June, kills his twin brother, kills his solicitor, and then goes and randomly kills 10 more people and allegedly kills himself. Now, back in 2010 when this happened, what I did was I just looked at his list of victims to see if any of them stood out as perhaps having a motive. And one of them I did find a potential motive, right? This is Kevin Commons, who was a solicitor. Right? This is Kevin Commons, who was a solicitor. He was a top solicitor, ran his own practice in Cumbria. 6 months prior to the shootings, there was Cumbrian floods. Now, people were saying that these floods were caused by the water company, right? Because the rainfall was not unprecedented, apparently. And there's a particular reservoir called a Thirlmere Reservoir, which they'd been overfilling, allegedly, right? And that exacerbated the floods. This is what Kevin Commons' law firm was saying, and it was suing United Utilities, the water company, alleging that they caused the floods. Now, you're talking thousands of houses, each with £10,000, £20,000 worth of damage. A police officer died in these floods. So you're talking a huge legal case. And if you read articles such as this one, they're pretty convincing that perhaps this water company was negligent and exacerbated these floods. This is Marcus Nixon, who continued the legal action against United Utilities after Kevin Commons had been murdered by Derek Bird, and I did speak to him briefly. I'll mention that in a second. So what made me suspicious was this article, because the 2 leading figures at United Utilities both stepped down shortly after Derek Bird went on his killing spree. And I just thought that was a bit of a coincidence. This article says that United Utilities dismissed the claim that their chief executive, Philip Green, is considering stepping down. And you can see the date on there. It's the 24th. So it's a week before Derek Bird's killing spree. The main guy is going to step down. It says that dismissed claim, but he did step down not long after. And the managing director, Charlie Cornish, also stepped down in June of 2010. So the 2 main guys stepped down round about the time of the Derek Bird incident. This is Philip Green, the chief executive, who stepped down with David Cameron. He's got some very powerful friends. He used to be the director and chief operating officer at Reuters. So the point I'm making is, if Kevin Commons' legal action had been successful, this guy, chief exec of United Utilities, probably would have been in prison. Right? Probably. Because the police officer died in those floods, and if they had been found negligent, he's the top guy, so he's the one who would get the blame. I'm not saying that he had anything to do with what happened with Derek Bird. I'm saying that, this guy would have ended up in prison had Kevin Commons' legal action been successful. So I just thought, well, perhaps Derek Bird's been mind-controlled, as set out in this book by Neil Saunders, that it's possible to make people do things against their wishes. And I looked no more into it. I didn't actually look at CCTV evidence or any physical evidence on the day. I just thought that maybe the guy, I didn't question whether he had actually killed these people. And then I received an email just last year. It said, "The main reason I'm contacting you is I was fascinated by your brief talk done whilst you were touring on the Cumbria massacre.
I was particularly interested in the claim that United Utilities Water Company were being held culpable for the Cumbria flooding previous to the massacre. Anyway, there is overwhelming evidence that points to a false flag event perpetrated by a possible paramilitary individual using an identical car to Derek Bird, the alleged murderer. Have you looked at this incident in detail at all? I have done quite a bit of research regarding this and I'm convinced this is a state-sponsored massacre. Please get in touch. Okay, so I went to see this witness, I looked at this person's evidence, and based on that I interviewed him, and then I went to Cumbria. And I've spoken to quite a few witnesses because I think, as I'm going to explain now, I think it is very smelly. Now, let's just explain what happened on June the 2nd, 2010. This is the mainstream version. Derek Bird, taxi driver. He goes to a place called Lamplugh. He goes into his twin brother's house and murders them in cold blood. Right? This is at 5 o'clock in the morning. He then goes to his solicitor's house at 10:20 in the morning. So there's over a 5-hour gap between these two murders. And I'll come back to why I think that might be the case. He then drives straight into Whitehaven where he pulls up at a taxi rank, he kills a taxi driver, shoots another taxi driver, and shoots 2 more taxi drivers, and then makes his way to Egremont where he kills a few people there. He's mainly shooting people out of his window. He's stopping his cab, asking them to come over for the time and that kind of thing, and then just shooting them. He then goes to Seascale, kills 3 people there. He kills 12 people in total, injures 11, I think, drives into the woods, dumps his car, and then goes into the woods and allegedly shoots himself. So that's the official story. Now, you would imagine that there's mountains of witness testimony, and there is, but there are problems with it. There were, I think, around about 90 people gave statements or were cross-examined at the inquest. This is first-hand witnesses who saw what happened. Now, I've tried to get copies or transcripts of those witness testimonies, and I haven't been able to, and I'm going to explain what happened. So I've been relying on mainstream media articles. Now, the problem with all of the mainstream media articles of witness statements, and there's lots of witness statements of people who allegedly saw the gunman doing his dirty deeds all the way around here, right? None of them ask the witness what the gunman looked like. It's assumed right from word go that it was Derek Bird. So it's as if they don't need a description of the criminal, of the gunman. So you don't get any descriptions. So that's a major problem, which is why we need the initial statements. Now, you would imagine also there'll be mountains of CCTV, because this is a very busy town with CCTV cameras all over the place. And he actually got out of his car when he shot at one of the taxi drivers. But they've put out a tiny amount of CCTV. And the amount in the CCTV that they have put out shows a major anomaly, which I'm going to explain to you in a second. This is an article from the Daily Express, and it says, images recorded by a surveillance camera are understood to show in high definition the exact moment Bird pumps bullets into the head of his 43-year-old colleague. The footage is so horrific it can never be shown to the public, say police. So they're saying they have got high definition images showing Derek Bird with his gun, right? But there's no images of Derek Bird with a gun that I've been able to find. Not one CCTV or still image, either before the incident or during the incident. Show me an image of Derek Bird with a gun and I might believe he shot someone. Can you believe that? This guy shot 12 people, or killed 12 people, and shot 11 others, and there's not an image of him with a gun in the public domain. This is the only image they've actually put out. It's a CCTV clip where he drives along, he's fleeing the taxi rank for the first time here after he's allegedly just shot one taxi driver. This is all they've given us. Right? Now, I don't think that shows a gun, and I don't think you can make out who's in that vehicle. The only image I have been able to find which allegedly shows Derek Bird with a gun. Right? Why can't they show us those high-definition images that they described and just blur out the victim? We've got no image of him in the street with a gun. Now, the CCTV images that they have released, I'm just going to go through some of them. This is him at 6 minutes past 5 in the morning in Frizzington, allegedly staking out Kevin Commons, who was his second victim. This is Derek Bird's car here. It's a Citroen Picasso. Now, I'm just going to run through what happened in Whitehaven. So he shot his twin brother at 5 in the morning. 20 past 10, he shot his solicitor in another village. He's driven into Whitehaven. Now, he drives into Whitehaven. He stops his car, winds the window down. He calls over Darren Rocastle, pumps 2 bullets into him. He dies.
He then moves his car about 15-20 feet further forward, jumps out the car, and he runs up the street where he pursues another taxi driver and he shoots him, right? He survives, Don Reed. He then gets back in his car, he drives off, and he drives right the way around the town centre in a big square, and he comes back past the same taxi rank, okay? This time, he just pumps 2 bullets into the side of a building, and some CCTV from that incident has been released, because you see all of the people duck. But he doesn't kill anyone or hit anyone in that incident, just 2 bullets into the side of the hairdressers. He then speeds off. He goes round a corner where he stops at some traffic lights. We all stop at traffic lights when we just killed someone. Anyway, supposedly another taxi driver, he calls over, comes to the window, shoots him, Paul Wilson. He survives, just gets scratched on the cheek, which is unusual. He actually says in his statement that he thought he'd been shot with a blank. And a blank can cause some damage if you... So he supposedly shot him at point blank range and he survived with just a scratch. Anyway, he then goes on to another part of Whitehaven where he shoots at another taxi driver and the passenger. He then goes off to Egremont and the other places. Okay, so this is him, and you can check all of these images on CCTV, on BBC website and on Whitehaven News websites. They've all been released. So this is him after he's shot Darren Rowcastle and shot the other taxi driver. He's got back in the car and he's driving away for the first time. He then drives around the block in a big square. So this is Duke Street here, where the taxi rank is to his left. This is 3 streets away. This is Lowther Street. So he's coming back round the second time to shoot into the taxi rank again. This is Bird's vehicle here, and this is the hairdressers is just there. So he fires a bullet out his window, and you see these people duck. So he fires 2 bullets, and then he speeds off up this street. He then turns left, comes down this street. This is where he stops at the traffic lights, where he allegedly shoots someone here, but you don't actually see that. All right, now I'm going to show you these images again. Let's just go back. This image is his vehicle at the end of his killing spree, which is dumped at the end of a country lane. He's gone off into the woods. I'm going to show you the video that this comes from. This is from a helicopter.
Derek Bird's few hours of carnage ended near here. What made him start the shootings that ended with 12 people, 13 including himself, dead.